The desert remembers nothing. Wind scrapes old stone. Sand swallows footprints before nightfall. Out here, where the Han Empire met the end of the world, a broken arch still points west. The Jade Gate, west tip of the Great Wall. For centuries, anyone who passed beneath it walked into risk, to oases strung like green beads, to the kingdoms of the western regions, to the hunting grounds of the Xiongnu. Most never returned. But in the year 76 of the Common Era, 13, just 13, came home. Their story begins 2 winters earlier, with a decision made in the warm heart of empire. The Han Empire had re-entered the western regions, today's southern Xinjiang and the far shoulders of Central Asia, to steady the Silk Road and keep the nomad confederations off China's flank. Trade meant power. The oases were its valves. Under Emperor Ming, the protectorate had been restored after decades of absence. Outposts were planted like small campfires in a cold black plain. One such fire was Jinman, a fortress on the northern slopes of the Sky Mountain. To command it, the court sent a colonel, no great name in the capital, Gheng Gong. He arrived in late 74 with 500 men and 3 clear orders: protect the caravans from bandits, monitor the wary kingdoms of Jushi, and prevent the Xiongnu from pouring south into Han lands. On the map, Jinman was a thumbtack holding down the page. In reality, it was a thin line against a storm. The storm broke in the spring of 75. 20,000 Xiongnu riders crossed the desert like weather, struck the rear Jushi king, and left his crown in the dust. Gheng Gong reacted fast, sending 300 of his 500 to reinforce another fortress. They never arrived. Ambushed and cut to pieces, that column vanished into the sand. In an instant, Colonel Geng's garrison was halved, and the Xiongnu's circle tightened around Jinman. On the walls, the defenders set to work. Arrows and crossbow bolts were tipped with poison. Colonel Geng turned chemistry into theatre. He stepped onto the rampart and called down to the horsemen, "Han arrows are sent by the gods, and the hit ones are like ulcers." When the first assaults came and men fell writhing with wounds that burned and blackened, blood boiling, that sentence did the rest. Fear is a weapon, Colonel understood, one you never run out of during a thunderstorm. With the camp below distracted by rain and the confidence of numbers, Colonel Geng led a handful of men through the gate. They slipped like needles through canvas, tore tents, and cut the cords of command. In the blackout violence of lightning and confusion, a rumor took shape. The Han soldiers are spirit-like. Whatever the Xiongnu chieftain truly said, by dawn, the siege was gone. Jinman still stood. A victory for 200 defenders versus 20,000 cavalry, similar to 300 Spartans against 20,000 Persian avant-gardes. Why were the Han soldiers so effective against Xiongnu cavalry? A primary factor was the Han's advanced crossbow technology, which provided a decisive edge over the Xiongnu's recurve bows. Han crossbows could shoot bolts farther, with greater range and penetration, effective 150 to 300 meters, and with higher precision and more power than the nomads' bows, effective around 80 meters, making them highly effective against charging cavalry. During the initial assaults, Gheng Gong's men poisoned their arrowheads and crossbow bolts, causing caustic, festering wounds that not only inflicted heavy casualties, but also demoralized the attackers, who retreated after suffering from these debilitating injuries. The crossbows allowed volleys from behind walls, disrupting Xiongnu formations before they could close in, and the bolt's design prevented easy reuse by the enemy. This is what's different from Spartans in Thermopylae, who dishonored ranged warfare. A second factor is that the horsemen had no stirrups. Therefore, the cavalry of this period were not as mighty as nomadic forces like Cathay during Northern Song period, 8th to 10th centuries. Another factor lies in the armor. Even if almost all Xiongnu cavalry wore armor, most were made of leather, which could easily be penetrated by arrows and bolts. Only a handful of important figures had metallic protective measures. This is similar to Xerxes' cavalry, who were not as well protected as Xian or Mongol counterparts during Southern Song period, 10th–12th centuries. However, Han ranks were ironclad, meaning arrows from Xiongnu could not pierce their armor. Based on historical records and archaeological estimates, the overall armor rate of the army of Eastern Han, second half of Han Dynasty, was approximately 40%. As the Wuji colonel, the troops under Gheng Gong's command were professional border garrison forces focused on farming and defense, making their equipment relatively superior and likely higher than the average, though no exact proportion is recorded. During the defense of Shula later, they would resort to boiling their armor, bows, and crossbows to eat their sinews and leather, which implies that the majority of soldiers were equipped with armor that had leather, further confirming a high rate of armor provision. This is similar to Spartan military practice, a full panoply, not semi-naked in the film 300. In the context of Eastern Han Dynasty, armor like that worn by Gheng Gong's troops, the primary type was lamella armor, consisting of hundreds of small, overlapping rectangular plates, lamellae, laced together with cords. These plates were predominantly made of iron, or occasionally steel alloys, providing the main protective structure, while leather, often lacquered or hardened rawhide, was used for the lacing cords, backing fabric, and sometimes as supplementary plates or reinforcements for flexibility and weight reduction. Helmets were typically iron as well. Archaeological evidence from Han tombs confirms this composition. For example, a Western Han suit, with continuity into the Eastern Han, featured 328 iron lamellae pieces, and a recent 2024 discovery in a Western Han tomb yielded over 6,000 tiny scales, about 0.39 inches wide and 0.02 inches thick, made of a mix of iron, copper, and leather, marking the first multi-material scales found from the period. The inventory records from the Han era list hundreds of thousands of iron lamella pieces produced, underscoring iron's dominance as the core material for professional infantry gear. No precise percentages or weights for the iron content per suit are documented in historical or archaeological sources. Lamella designs varied by region, unit, and resources, but the iron plates formed the bulk of the protective coverage, typically 500 to 1,000 per cuirass, while leather elements accounted for assembly and minor structural support. This mix allowed for durability against Xiongnu arrows while remaining lighter than full plate equivalents. Estimated 15 to 25 kilograms total weight per suit based on comparative ancient armor, though exact Han figures are unavailable, while Spartan full panoplies weighed 25 to 35 kilograms. The leather's presence was notable enough that, during the Shula siege, soldiers could boil it, along with bowstrings, for sustenance when supplies ran out. In addition, when opportunities arose, the Han conducted daring nighttime raids using broadswords and halberds, exploiting the Xiongnu's vulnerability in dismounted or disorganized states during sieges. These sorties broke enemy momentum and inflicted losses without exposing the main force. The Han soldiers' discipline, honed through professional training and a cohesive unit structure, like Spartan hoplites. Both cultures elevated honor as a core motivator, with surrender equated to profound shame that could taint families and legacies. For Spartans, honor was everything. Spartan mothers famously told sons to return with your shield or on it. Captivity or flight meant social death. The 300's last stand was a deliberate choice to die gloriously rather than yield, preserving Kleos' immortal fame. This cultural pressure ensured cohesion even in dire odds. Similarly, Han military culture was deeply influenced by Confucianism, which stressed loyalty, zhong, righteousness, ye, and avoiding humiliation, ru. Surrender wasn't just tactical failure, it was moral disgrace, often leading to execution, exile, or familial ruin. The Analects and other texts urged dying in service over living in shame. To be killed is better than to be humiliated. In the Han, defeated generals like those after Xiongnu raids faced demotion or suicide to restore honor. Prisoners were ritually shamed, e.g., shaved heads, tattoos. Gheng Gong's men would embody this. They would endure starvation, boiling armor for food, and refuse envoy terms, even cooking a Xiongnu negotiator as a defiant gesture, holding out until relief arrived, with only 13 survivors. This mirrors Thermopylae's sacrificial ethos, where death preserved honor. In the storm's fading roar, as Jinman's walls drank the dawn like parched earth, Gheng Gong's ironclad remnant 200 souls forged in poison bolts and midnight blades watched the Xiongnu horde dissolve into the desert's maw, their thunder broken by Han will unyielding as Spartan bronze. Like Leonidas and his 300 at Thermopylae's narrow throat. Though Jinman's sands settled, Gheng Gong's saga pressed on to Shula's unyielding ramparts, where the desert's trial would etch deeper scars into the annals of defiance.